Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Friday. I hope the day is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Thank you for joining me. As always, the weekend is very, very nearly here. It might already be here by the time you're watching or listening to this show. We have got a lot to talk about today. A lot. It was a busy day in the Arsenal news world yesterday, so we're going to get stuck right into that. We're going to talk about Gabriel and his new contract, which is now very, very close, which is fantastic news. And I'm going to start by talking about that, by the way, rather than talking about Sesko, Gyökeres, all that sort of stuff, which we will discuss, because obviously there's been developments in the last 24 hours. I say, oh my God, I'm already a little bit bored of it, I have to say. So I wanted to focus on Gabriel to start today's show off, because I think that is like huge news, like monumental news. I think it's massive, just equally as important as any new signing that arrives this summer is the news about Gabriel and the renewals at Arsenal, because that is just there's as much importance on the renewals as there are on new signings, in my view. So we're going to talk about that as well. We'll talk about Zubimendi. Got lots of questions and comments from you guys as well to get stuck into. So it's going to be a busy Inside Arsenal today. We'll start with the news with Gabriel, who is now very, very close to signing a new contract, advanced talks over a deal which will probably keep him at the club, I think, 2030. So it's going to be a 5-year contract for Gabriel, which is just brilliant news, by the way. Now, these talks have been going on for a long, long time now. First started, sort of tentative talks started about a year ago. But the fact that now they've ramped up as much as they have, and we're as close now as him signing as he is, I think is huge for Andrea Berta, for coming in, for taking control of these contract talks, and pretty much immediately getting one of the biggest ones over the line. I think is really, really good for him. I think it shows a real good statement. I think ahead of a summer of potential renewals, which, as I said, in my view, are just equally as big as any new signings who arrive, keeping the sort of core group of this squad together. And the fact most of them are coming up to renewals at the same sort of time, I think it's just as important as any new transfer that comes in. And this sets a really, really good tone. I think Gabriel is massive. He's huge. He's a leader in this team. He's my player of the season. He's a lot of people's player of the season, by all accounts. As I said, an absolute leader in the team. We've seen since he's been out the sort of effect that it's had on Arsenal in both areas as well, because we're not just talking defensively. He's a leader in both boxes when it comes to attacking set pieces, when it comes to defending set pieces. Seen the amount of goals Arsenal conceded from set pieces since Gabriel has been out. We've seen Saliba, his form drop off a little bit since Gabriel's been out. Saliba will tell you when you talk to him himself, Gabriel's better than me. Says it himself. He says he's been better than me this season. He's one of the best defenders in the world. And I truly believe that Gabriel is one of the best defenders in the world, and he's just coming towards the peak of his powers now. So to keep him amid real interest from Saudi Arabia, massive money on offer from Saudi Arabia as well, to be able to, I don't think convince him that this is a place to stay is really the right word, because I don't think you need much convincing, because I think Arsenal is a very good place to play football at the moment. You're in London, Gabriel is, as I said, a leader of this team, so he is very, very settled. But still, when you've got the amount of money that is being offered, sort of thrown at you and whispered in your ear, there's always a chance that your head might turn. It did with Gabriel last season, to be fair, which is why he was left out of the team in the early doors until the transfer window shut, and he resisted the urge, or Arsenal kept him until after the transfer window shut, and then he came back in the team and was and had been great. I just think it is really, really important. And again, I think it's a really good start for Andrea Berta, who's come on. There's no relationship between Andrea Berta and these players. When he arrived in March, and he's coming up to these really important renewals. Edu was so tight with these players and their families and their agents and all that sort of stuff. So Andrea Berta's coming in as the new guy in the middle, at the start of a hugely important batch of renewals. So I thought it was always going to be quite difficult for him, because you've immediately got to strike up that rapport and make it, not become a friend. I think that's probably the wrong phrase, but what I mean. It's easier when you get these deals done when you've got a relationship with people and you've got that sort of rapport with people. So he had to come in from scratch and start that off at a really important time. To get this one over the line so quickly, I think is really, really big for him. What it says, the sort of statement it puts out to the other players who are waiting to renew at the moment. Hopefully, you're talking about Saliba as well. Gabriel's his big mate, and his centre-back rock of a partner. It's going to be much easier to get Saliba to renew once he's seen his mate renew as well. So that could be a massive thing. Again, you've got Saka, you've got Lewis Skelly, you've got Maneri, all these renewals that are coming up. And just to have the first one can create a bit of a snowball effect. So I think it's hugely important. I'm absolutely delighted, as you can probably tell, that Gabriel is set to sign a new deal at the moment. It's not signed yet. So you never know, something could throw a spanner in the works. But at the moment, it is certainly, going in the right direction. The reports you've seen about advanced talks and all that stuff are correct. It is heading in the right direction. So fingers crossed, Arsenal can get that over the line. We won't have to wait very long at all until we hear the news that Gabriel has put pen to paper on a new long-term contract. Okay, we are going to talk about the striker debate. I mean, it wouldn't be a daily show without talking about Gyökeres versus Sesko. And obviously we saw the news yesterday, it was reported by Fabrizio Romano, that Arsenal are in concrete talks with Leipzig over a move for Sesko. I mean, it's not really moved it on too much because we saw Sky Sports Germany report the same thing with the same sort of terminology as well, the concrete talks last week. And it's obviously led to a huge debate on social media. I don't get the anger that people seem to be so divided on this one. It almost feels like the sort of Wenger in, Wenger out era. People get so angry. It's like whatever side of the fence you sit on. If you say something about the other player, people get so angry. I was trying to have a normal conversation on social media, which I know is hard, with a mate of mine yesterday about it. And I was saying, if Sesko, and I don't know if this is the case, look, Fabrizio's obviously far more clued up than I am when it comes to transfers. So if he says it, then who am I to doubt him? So if this is the case, and Sesko and Arsenal have sort of started to move towards Sesko more than Gyökeres, then fine. And I was having this conversation, and I was saying I think it's probably the most sensible signing. I still probably would just about prefer Gyökeres out of the two, but I don't really care. I just want one of them. But I was trying to have a reasoned debate with my friend and saying, like, can the club really look at a short-term fix? Can they really think win now as a club? Can you really do business that way? We can as fans, but as a club, as a business, when you're investing £100 million on a player with wages, can you really think we've got to do this to win now? I don't think you can. I don't think a business can operate like that. You've always got to look more long-term, I think. And I was trying to have that debate. And honestly, the pylon from it was just mad. And it's just, there's so much anger. It's like these, and I get that people have their favored players, but let's face it, we don't know as much as a recruitment department. We don't know as much as the scouting analysts and all that sort of stuff. And if they really think that this guy is the guy to go for, you just got to back it at the end of the day. It's my view anyway on it. Again, I would probably just favour Gyökeres out of the two, but I just don't really care. I want one of them signed because I think they're both excellent players. I do think Sesko is probably the most sensible signing of the two. I think if you're a sensible club working the market, I think Sesko ticks more boxes of why you should sign him than Gyökeres. So I'm kind of easy in the situation, but I just don't, the anger on it. Wow. Honestly, it just blows my mind. It really, really blows my mind. I got a few comments from it. Harley here has got in touch and says, main takeaway for me, of course, is that it would suggest Sesko is our priority from Fabrizio's news. Must admit, though, I am not really surprised. He fits the Arteta profile of player better than Gyökeres with regards to age and potential. However, I will be very surprised if we pay the supposed £93 million asking price. Like you, I would have been happy with either target. However, I really hope there is no backlash from the fan base over personal preference, which I've seen online already, which is what I was just talking about, obviously. Harley continues by saying, let's all get behind whichever player signs and not lose our heads when they haven't scored after 2 appearances. Have a feeling Sesko could be one of the best strikers in the world for the next 10 years, and he could be ours. Really excited to see what he can do in an Arsenal shirt if it gets done, which is exactly how I feel about it, Harley. And it's just a sensible approach to feel. I just don't get the whole anger and throwing the toys out of the pram over, oh, he's not going for the guy that I want. The club aren't going for the guy that I want. It just, I don't know. It just really surprises. Well, it doesn't surprise me. That's the wrong word. It doesn't because I see it all the time, but it still blows my mind. It's just that it's immediately you kind of want to go on to social media and have a reasoned debate with people. But as soon as you sort of open it up, you're like, yeah, you can't have a reasoned debate with people. It's just impossible at this stage. Jason has got in touch here on the Inside Arsenal Patreon. And if you want to become a Patreon member and get involved in the Patreon chat with us, which is really fun during the day. Great to see so many people involved in it at the moment, having good discussions with everyone. And Jason has got in touch. It says, similar to you, I've been fairly agnostic in regards to Sesko versus Gyökeres. The longer I think on it, the clearer it becomes that it must be Sesko. To a club that to be a club that progresses, we really have to learn from our past mistakes while we have a mindful of our budget. We can't miss opportunities like this. This feels very much like Isak all over again. We didn't stump up the cash for Watkins in January, effectively surrendering the EPL and UCL to make that sacrifice worth it. We can't penny pinch when a player Arteta has identified as the guy to lead the line is available. Berta was brought in to get these sort of big deals done. This feels like the pivotal moment that will define the Arteta project and our ability to get and stay on top. Do you have any concern that passing on Sesko will be as big a regret or miss as not signing Isak ahead of Newcastle a few years ago? Hopefully not, but I don't know if they are going to pass on Sesko at the moment, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But that is my fear when I sort of look at the two of them. My big fear, if they do get Gyökeres, which again, I probably just favour, but if they do get Gyökeres, my big fear would be Sesko absolutely explodes into the player that an awful lot of people within football think he is going to become. And then we have to watch from afar as this guy that we very nearly could have had becomes an absolute world beater. Of course, that's just a fear. It's an irrational fear at the moment because you don't know. It's hypothetical. We don't know what's going to happen. But that would be my big concern, I have to say, if that was to be the case. A couple more getting in touch. Kitty's Cat says, what's the problem with Arsenal's squad building? They could have signed Sesko last summer for half the price, but they dragged their feet, and now those same feet are getting cold. Jellybelly says, Arsenal passed up on triggering a 50 million release clause last summer. What on earth happened to the gentleman's agreement? Arsenal reportedly had him for, Charles. We all heard how Arsenal are happy for Sesko to sign a new deal. Continue his development at Leipzig. Now the price has doubled. What the hell has happened? Arsenal didn't pass up on triggering a 50 million release clause last summer. They would have done it, but Sesko said he didn't want to leave. You know, they were there to sign him last summer. It was all, but it depended on Sesko. And then Sesko said, no, even if you trigger a release clause, I'm not going. I want to stay for another year, sign a new contract with Leipzig. So it was absolutely his idea. You know, Arsenal would have signed him last summer if he said yes. It's as simple as that. So they, when like Kitty says they could have signed him last summer, they couldn't. They tried. They did everything they could, but then he said no to them and to everyone else and said, I'm staying and signing a new contract. The gentleman's agreement you talk about, gentleman's agreement in football, I just don't understand them really, because if it's not set in stone, if it's not written in stone, what are you going to do? And so, yeah, and I don't think there was ever a gentleman's agreement with Arsenal. There was just a gentleman's agreement. Like Leipzig kind of said, okay, you can kind of go for this sort of money, but then he signed a new contract and there was a release clause written in it that was going to go up and up. So the gentleman's agreement, they don't really mean anything. Unless it's set in stone, unless you're contractually obliged to do something, clubs can always change their minds on it. But yeah, just again on that, Arsenal didn't pass up signing Sesko last summer. They tried to sign Sesko last summer, but he said in the end that he wanted to stay. Just before I move on from this, Mark, my mate, Mark Shatliff, has got in touch with me and he was like, question for the pod tomorrow. Can you remember a transfer window with a more obvious transfer target between two players? Usually it's a lot of speculation around lots of players and positions, but it seems like this is a clear decision between Sesko and Gyökeres. And it got me thinking, I was like, can I ever remember one like this where it is basically feels like it is one or the other? And I can't really. There's always names thrown out that go, you know, that run throughout the summer, but this sort of 50-50 choice or 50-50 split, I can't think of too many examples. I'm sure there probably is. If you guys can remember, then let me know when you've known a situation like this before, involving Arsenal specifically, where it is very much felt like it is just one or the other for one position. I can't really think of one off the top of my head. And Mark messaged me that yesterday, and I was really thinking about it for a while, and I still can't think of it. So I'm throwing it open to you guys. Do you remember? Has there been a situation like this before? Let me know in the comments below. Moving on to another transfer involving Arsenal, of course, Martin Zubimendi. Raus, after there was the reports from Sammy that the sort of medical is now the final stage of this deal, but Real Sociedad's president, Joaquin Aperibe, has been speaking at a press conference yesterday. I think they're unveiling a new sporting director at Sociedad and a new manager, and he was talking to reporters of that, and he was asked about Zubimendi, and this is what he said. He said, "We've told Martin to go to the national team calmly, to think about it, and that we'd like him to stay. We know there are several options. Something might come to fruition or not. I don't see it happening in the short term. We don't see it that way, so we have to wait and see." Which has got alarm bells ringing, I think, from a lot of Arsenal fans again on social media. So I can, and I've had questions on it again on the Discord and things like that, and I can only reiterate what I've been saying for the last couple of months, really, when it comes to Zubimendi, that despite all the noise that comes out and these sort of quotes and the Real Madrid interest and all of that sort of stuff, the whole time from conversations I've had, Arsenal have just been very, very confident that this deal is going to get done. It might be we have to wait. I mean, obviously he's going away with Spain for the Nations League game, so it looks like that is definitely going to have to wait until after that. But I can just say what I've been saying the whole time is just from conversations I've had that Arsenal are very, very confident that Martin Zubimendi will be playing for them next season. So if you hear these sort of noise, you see these whispers, that's, I think, just keep that in your head for now. But again, it's Zubimendi. He's got history. So you can never say never until he's pictured holding that shirt. But I'm still very, very confident that Martin Zubimendi will be an Arsenal player. Right, let's move on to a couple more questions before we wrap this one up. El Neni Dream Will Do has got in touch on the Inside Arsenal Discord. Thank you very much for that. You say, hi, Charles, probably a day late on this, but what did you make of Eze's comments on how he'd do anything possible to win the Premier League? As the window is about to be upon us, it seems to be a big hint that he's willing to push for a move if one of us, Liverpool or City, come knocking. With all due respect to Palace, other than another rogue James Benj bet, nobody's expecting him to ever be able to achieve that. Do you think these comments like this could capture the attention of Berta or Mikel, or do you think that we are probably set in stone for our summer plans and that's already been decided? I can't imagine that if you're Arteta or Berta and you're sitting at London Colney and you're watching the screen while you're having lunch or something like that in the cafeteria, and you're watching Sky Sports News on the screens dotted around the walls, and you see these comments or hear these comments from Eze, that you suddenly think, we're gonna go and sign him now because he said that. So I don't think you could be swayed by public comments. I think if Arsenal are going to sign Eze or want to sign Eze, then that will already be the plan for now. I just can't imagine comments like this would sort of tip you over the edge, if you see what I mean. I hope they do. You all know my thoughts on Eze and Arsenal. I would absolutely snap him up this summer. And, comments like this, as you said, to me, feel like he's already, looking at what's to come next. The only thing with Eze is I doubt he'll be in an absolute rush to leave this year. Like, I don't think he'll really push for it this year. I think he'll go if someone comes in for him and makes a good offer for him. I think he'll go, and he's got a release clause, which makes him attainable. It's about £68 million, which is a good release clause. For him, I think that's good value for money in today's market. But if that doesn't get hit, I don't think he'll really push for a leave because he loves it at Palace. They're in Europe this season, which is going to be really, really special at Selhurst Park and those Europa League nights as well. So I think he would be, he'd be happy to stay for another season and be part of that if no one comes in for him. But yeah, in answer to your questions, I don't think interviews like that really have much of an impact on football because the plans would have been set in place for a long, long time for not just Arsenal, for pretty much every club approaching the summer transfer window. Luca, my boy, says, hi, Charles. Any thoughts on Camden being replaced at Emirates next season? Are the Asahi rumours true? They are the beer partner of Manchester City. Yeah, big news, of course, that the Camden Brewery relationship with Arsenal, contract with Arsenal, seems to have come to an end at the end of last season, and there will be a new beer partner rumoured to be Asahi. I'm not sure on Asahi. I have heard that Guinness is definitely signing some sort of deal with Arsenal. And so we'll wait and see if Guinness is going to become available in the stadium. My big fear with Guinness is for anyone who, like me, likes to have a beer at the games beforehand, when you're in the stadium, how long it takes to get normal pints out of Camden. Imagine the queues for Guinness, getting Guinness out. That would be a big, big fear of mine. As much as I do like Guinness, to have it poured at a football stadium worries me in terms of the length of time that will take. So I'm not sure about the Asahi rumours. I have heard them. I've seen the whispers, and the whole Camden Brewery contract coming to an end. I actually don't mind Camden. I know it gets a bit of a bad press, certainly inside the stadium, but I don't mind it. I've always drunk Camden. I drink it when I'm out, not all the time, but I do drink it when I'm out normally as well. So I'd be a bit sad to see Camden go, to be honest, because it's actually not a bad, I don't think, personal opinion, of course, before you pile on me. I don't think it's a bad drop, but we'll wait and see what the new deal is. Asahi, bit headache material that for me, but we'll see how that goes. Kieran says, Charles, I think I know your answer, but if you could have kept ESR, Nelson and Ketty Vieira for this season, who would you have kept? I still think when you reflect on that window and the amount of attacking departures, it's wild. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I think you're clearly thinking I'm going to say ESR because he's my favourite player out of a lot of them, and he is. And I didn't want ESR to go. But I have to say, the way the season panned out, I think I probably regret more Eddie going now. Because I think we could have done with Eddie at times last season without a striker, with all the injuries we had in the forward positions. And ESR was hit and miss at Fulham. I've got Fulham mates, and you talk to them, and there was some good moments, but there were some pretty underwhelming moments as well when he lost his place in the team for quite a long time. I don't think he did really ever want it back. To be fair, he's been sort of in and out of the team for the second half of the season. I think he could have done a job here. So I think really, really good player, and I'm still gutted that he went. But I think out of those lots, to be honest, I think I'd have kept Nketiah in hindsight because of the issues Arsenal have had in attack. And that's it from me today, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. As always, do have a good end to your week or start to the weekend, wherever you are around the world. And I will be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Probably the way things are going at the moment, with quite a lot more Arsenal news to discuss. Until then, speak to you soon. Bye-bye.